My dear Masala podcast fans, I've written a book called Bad Daughter. You surprised by the title? I think not. I've never shared such deeply personal things before. I talk about growing up in poverty. I talk about my father's violence, my mother's murder. I talk about how I turned my pain into power, navigating mental health, sexuality, spirituality, and patriarchy. Bad Daughter is my story of going from Mumbai's slums to New York's billboards. But it's your story too. What's the message of this book? It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what happened to you. You still get to have the life that you want. If you're looking for a book to move you and inspire you to change your life, type in Bad Daughter by Sangeeta Pillai on Amazon or go to my website, baddaughter.co.uk.
Sharam, Badtameez, Chee Chee.
I'm Sangeeta Pillai, and this is the Masala Podcast, a Spotify original where we talk about all those things that we're not supposed to talk about as South Asian women. Sex, sexuality, periods, menopause, mental health, nipple hair, shame, and many more taboos.
Since the beginning, I've only had low self-esteem, so I don't remember a childhood or teenagers, any days in my teenagers where I didn't feel shitty about myself.
It's time we heard the voices of real South Asian women, not just those we see in Bollywood or in mainstream Western media. It's time we had a real voice, a loud and proud and strong voice.
Our powers are so much beyond beauty. So we have so much unlimited potential that we need to start using. And these traps are just unnecessary.
I've invited some incredible women to join me around my virtual kitchen table and put the world to rights. In this episode of Masala Podcast, I speak with Seema Hari, who is a model, a software engineer, and a powerful activist fighting colorism. Seema talks about growing up as a dark-skinned Indian girl and the awful way she was treated by teachers and adults around her. She talks about feeling depressed and suicidal because of this, and how she slowly worked towards loving her own skin color to become a model and an activist, fighting hard to change South Asian attitudes towards dark skin. So let's maybe start. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you wear many hats. You're a software engineer, you're a model, you're an activist. There's loads of things that you do. Tell me a little bit about how you would describe yourself.
So I describe myself as an engineer first. I am an engineer at heart. I love technology. So that's how I grew up. I grew up wanting to, always be an engineer. Ever since, my dad, we didn't have cable TV, but we had a computer at home, which was very strange. Yeah. My dad had done a career change and he became a lawyer. And he quickly realized that, if he used a computer, typing out all those legal documents, a lot of the words are the same and repeated over and over again. So he got a computer home and it was the old MS-DOS computers. And I remember just thinking it was such a blast. And we used to play obviously Pac-Man and Dave and all those stupid Prince of Persia games. And I was just a fan of the computer since then. So I always knew I wanted to be an engineer ever since I decided to have a career or whatever. But yeah, I have kind of stumbled into modeling just out of sheer luck. And that took pretty late in my life. I think I started modeling when I was 29 or something like that. So the, ripe old age of the modeling fashion world, I started modeling. And I've always dabbled in things. So I love music and I love dancing. So I DJ a little bit. I'm trying to create my own music now. Yeah, it's just there are endlessly important and amazing things to learn in the world, and I can't stop myself from learning them. So I just keep going. I just keep finding new hobbies and pursuing them.
I remember when we chatted, you spoke about how this whole move from kind of Mumbai, which is where I'm from as well. So you and I discovered we're from Mumbai.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Mumbai. I studied to be an engineer, and then somehow through my job, I was working as a software engineer. My job somehow landed me in Shanghai. So I lived in China for about 2.5 years. And, growing up in Bombay as a dark skinned girl was really, really hard. And I talk about this all the time. It was a nightmare. Now that I think about it, like now that my life is awesome, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I was so depressed. So I've had a long journey through colorism. Like I remember ever since, I've had the ability to think, I remember, being very aware of my dark skin because that's what the world reflected back at me. Like, because that's what, even my youngest memories, they are clouded with being ridiculed about dark skin. Those are my earliest memories. And because these things sting so much, and even when you're so young you're being treated so badly, they just stay. They're like trauma that you keep collecting. And I've always been aware of my dark skin. And that's because I was ridiculed about it all the time. So it started, going to kindergarten and being bullied at school since the get-go. I remember, not wanting to go to the bathroom in the recess break because that's when all the kids would be in the bathroom and all the girls would be in the bathroom and they would make fun of me. So I would hold, everything in and then only go during different breaks or just take breaks during classes to go to the bathroom. And those things seem small right now, but I had so much trauma associated with that growing up because that's what I was aware of it all the time, right? And somehow you somehow develop coping mechanisms to deal with the ridicule. You develop thick skin, so you kind of get used to the ridicule, but it stings a lot more when it comes from adults. So you expect kids to be kind of rash, and you give them the license of being mean sometimes. And every school has bullies and stuff like that. But whenever it came from adults, like when it came from teachers or when it came from my relatives or family friends, it stung a lot because it meant that even when you are mature, you're going to hold the same beliefs. So it kind of makes you hopeless. So I remember teachers shoving me to the back of the dance or reprimanding me just because of how I looked that day and asking if my mom didn't know how to take care of me. Things like that really, really stung. And it was really hard to deal with. So, since the beginning, I've only had low self-esteem. So I don't remember a childhood or any days in my teenagers where I didn't feel shitty about myself. And I later on realized that, throughout my life, I was depressed and suicidal. There wasn't a day when I didn't wish to escape this reality where I had dark skin and I couldn't escape from that, right? And all that the world reflected back at me was just either ridicule or pity or some kind of I want to fix you attitude. So yeah, it was really difficult to deal with all of that. And I even wonder right now, how did I cope with that? I can't understand what kind of inhuman strength I garnered because of all this ridicule and because of having to take so much hate from the world. But I remember not having the ability to make friends at all when I was younger. When I was younger, I had no friends at all. I used to talk to all my plants and all my pillows and things like that. Lots of imaginary friends because it was so hard for me to make friends because everyone would just come at me first. Their first reaction would be something so hateful that I wouldn't have the guts to approach people at all.
I think it's some of the things you said were just so resonant to me. It's so heartbreaking that as a child, you have to hear these things from other children and adults and people who are supposed to look after you and care for you, like your teachers. I think that's absolutely heartbreaking. I wonder if you feel comfortable saying some of the things that they were saying to you, whether it was adults or children or teachers.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I remember is people asking me over and over again if I wash my face. And I'm like, what kind of a person?
What does that even mean?
What does that mean? You think I can wash
this
away?
So what skin color washes off?
Yeah. And, that is so bad. And I remember, like, even as a child thinking, like, how can these people think like that? Like, why would someone not wash their face, you know? But the things that really stung were people blaming my parents all the time, especially my mother, because I used to play sports and I was, you know, always dark skinned and getting darker and darker by time. My people who call my mom all like they would call her a bad mother to her face, and or you know, teachers would ask if my mother didn't know how to take care of my skin and if she didn't know how to like use powder, you know, talcum powder, because that's the only thing we used to
Which
have.
is this white powder,
Which is
isn't it,
just
that we
white
use
powder,
in India?
yeah.
I remember this. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So
Which it makes no sense in the world when you think about it. Like, what is talcum powder? Like, it's such an Asian,
Yeah.
Indian thing in my experience.
It's such an Indian thing. And I think that's like Indian, it used to be at least like Indian people's version of makeup. Like if you've put powder,
Yes.
like you're ready to go out to the world. Otherwise,
you're
you're
ready
not.
to face the world. This white powder
Yes.
on your face.
And you know, for people who are light skinned, it doesn't look as bad. So you know, it does actually make them look, you know, how do you
Takes off the shine
takes
from
off
your
the
face or
shine
something,
and
I
like takes
said.
off the
Yeah.
sweat, right? But if you're a dark skinned person, it just looks like you know, a gray sheet
This
over
layer
your face.
of white film.
Yes,
on
a
your
layer of
face.
white film. And you know, when you sweat and stuff, it just becomes like white spots. It was traumatizing. I never used it because it was just like, I have to keep worrying about, you know, what my face looks like. And it definitely looked gray when we used to use powder. But yeah, that was a funny thing. But horrible things, oh my god, the kind of things I've heard. People would ask you know, like if my mom married an African or if she took a honeymoon in Africa. And
Oh my God, that is horrible.
it's horrible.
What are
Like,
horrible things to say on so many levels,
I know,
right?
exactly. And like, you know, it was, I mean, so many of these things I have heard that I have not even registered. I have just been like,
I know.
deny, block, and delete. And some of those things really stung. And the things that really stung is what I remember. Obviously, like people call me Kali all the time, Kali Kaluti.
Which is,
you know,
black,
yeah, it's,
isn't it,
it's,
in Hindi?
It's dark skinned and in a derogatory way. It's never used in a good way.
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to reclaim that word because I know it's the most amazing goddess in the Hindu mythology.
I was literally going to say that. Kali is like this fierce and awesome goddess.
Yeah.
She's like angry and she kicks ass and she cuts people's heads off.
Yeah.
So to be called Kali is actually thank you very much.
Yeah,
You know, I didn't know
exactly.
I was that powerful, but thank you.
Exactly. And to think, you know, like because this word had followed me around so much and because I was traumatized by it so much, I never even extended my own thinking because I knew about Kali as a goddess. But I never was like, you know, oh, I can just think of it as like Kali the goddess and feel badass because I think Kali is so badass. Like Kali is used to represent the concept of time. And basically the reason she has heads all around her body and like strung around her neck is because she cuts people's ego. So she breaks your ego. And basically, if you think of it, like with time, like whatever ego you build up about yourself, it's going to go down because you're eventually going to die. So like time's going to always kill your ego. And also like, if you think about time, it existed before like matter and before the Big Bang and like all of those things, right? So like, it has to be like infinitely dark. Like it's when nothing exists. And that's the concept of time. You know, that's when time started.
That's
before
beautiful. I
everything.
didn't know that.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
So
That's really
the more I learned about her, the more I was like, this is amazing. This is something that we all need. So basically the symbology and like the mythology of Kali is supposed to remind you of like dissolving your ego and like thinking outside your ego and like looking at her image should remind you that, you know, time is the same for everyone and like time is the great leveler and it's going to break your ego and things like that. And obviously her imagery is very badass and like also very playful, so that her tongue is always stuck out in all the images because it's not like, oh, I'm going to eat you. It's like, look what I did, you know, like that kind of, when someone breaks your ego out of pranking you, like someone is just, you know, trying to mess with you because they know what's up with you, you know. So obviously I was called a Kali. I was called like, you know, a gorilla a lot of times, you know, when I walk down the street. What else? Like, you know, the N word. And it used to be like in India, when once people, got used to the Western world and like Western music and like things like that trickled in, people learned that word. And so a lot of times in my like late teenagers and in my 20s, it was always like the N word all around Bombay, which was really triggering. But yeah, it's I actually wrote a poem about this. That was the first time I actually spoke about my dark skin, was when I had that first photo shoot and the photos came out, and I was so flabbergasted, and I was so blown away by the pictures. And to even relive that moment when I had my first photo shoot, because I was so self-conscious and so like inside my head I was exploding. But to see the photo, it looks like I'm so calm and so serene and like so confident, but inside I was exploding. So when I had to post the picture, I had to tell people that this is the story behind it. Like all my life, for so many years, you've only ridiculed me and you've only harassed me, and nobody's ever said my skin color is beautiful. But look at these pictures. You don't see pictures like this.
And look at me now. Yeah. And look at me now. Oh my God, I love that. I absolutely love that.
So yeah, I mean, I decided to write all the insults, the worst ones that people had said to me, because I wanted people to realize that, a lot of people just also will minimize it. Where you just be like, people are just like that, and, that's just a small thing, or, that's just
But
a beauty thing.
If you hear that every single day of your life,
Yep.
and it's derogatory, it's insulting, it's not somebody saying something casual.
Yep.
This is deeply insulting and abusive. If you, every time you step on the street,
Yeah.
someone is calling you horrible names. In school, if your kind of students are saying, horrible things to you, if teachers are asking you if you haven't washed your face, I mean, you can't get away from that stuff. It's deeply, deeply damaging.
It's so damaging.
I mean,
It's so
you
damaging.
can't just dismiss it.
You can't dismiss it. And people don't understand that. People think that they are entitled to make fun of dark-skinned people. People think that they are, because they have internalized that colorism also, they think because they are fighting for lighter skin, you must also fight for lighter skin. And like they feel pity for you because you're not in that fight. So kind of like their colorism and their existence becomes justified because they can ridicule you. Otherwise, if they just let you be, then their existence is questioned, right? Their strive for lighter skin is questioned. So as soon as you enter their world, you're challenging them, being like, why is this dark? Why does she look happy? Why is she smiling? So they have to ruin that for you. So yeah, it comes from a place where everyone's perspective needs to change. So like, I remember even back then, after all the hurtful things I would hear on the street and everywhere, I never had any ill feelings towards those people, because I knew that, something's wrong with their mind. So even in my young, childhood ages, I still knew that if I could just explain to them, or like if they just knew, and like I felt like they need to, grow in maturity to get to that point. But I couldn't get them there. Like I was trying, but like I had very limited tools to work with. And now I understand it so much better because I'm older and wiser. And that's why my whole thing is like, I have to talk about it, even for like the off chance that somebody has not heard this message, because it took a really, really long time for that message to get to me. And I had the best support system, and I had the best family, and I had everything going for me. And like, if it still took me that long to get past it, I'd want to accelerate that process for everybody else, because, nobody needs to go through that. Like I dread the day that, a dark-skinned girl or a boy has to still go to school and still face these things and not have tools to cope with it. It's so depressing. It's so heartbreaking.
What are some of the ways that, I'm sure you get a lot of messages from people whose lives you've affected positively. What are some of the things that people say to you on social media or email or whatever?
Yeah, it's mostly on social media. People are very, much more open on DMs and much more, vulnerable and okay to share their feelings. And so people share a lot of their stories. And most of the times it's so heartbreaking because it's just, something very similar to what I've experienced. And that's another thing I wanted to hit. It's because, colorism is slightly different from other social justice issues in the sense that you are so isolated because your own family, your own friends, and the people who are supposed to be the closest to you may harbor the same prejudice and may, try to fix you and may, not understand what you're going through at all. So the people closest to you have the power to damage you in this situation, and that's why it's so isolating. And because we haven't even only recently we've started talking about it, people haven't even had that discussion with their friends. If they are dark skinned, they haven't gone to their other dark skinned friend and be like, I'm feeling really shitty about this, because we would just felt like this is how it's going to be. We just have to accept it and move on, right? So people haven't had the chance to talk about it. So a lot of women talk about being in abusive relationships, which breaks my heart so much. Because they had really low self-worth and they stayed in that relationship because they couldn't understand, they were ridiculed. Some people talk about dowry and how dowry was associated with their dark skin.
So more dowry if you were dark skinned,
and how the dowry that they gave was not enough because they didn't get. It's so messed up. And dowry is illegal. That's why people can't talk about this in the open, because it's illegal. You can't admit that you had to pay dowry. But those are the kind of things that break my heart. And a lot of people always say they never had the confidence to be in front of photos, and I had that. The year that I did my first photo shoot, and that happened completely because of chance, because a makeup artist asked me if I wanted to be in photos. I remember not being able to sleep the night before, because I was just recently I was looking through albums and tearing up my old photos, right? Because I was so embarrassed of them. And that was me just recently. And now I'm how do I have the confidence to go in front of a camera, right? So when I was trying to sleep the night before, I was having all these thoughts being like, how am I going to do this? This is not going to be possible. So it's that constant negative self-talk that I think we are just so, you dark-skinned people are just used to not thinking of themselves as worthy in any aspect. So I hear a lot of that from women, especially. A lot of men also say that, if they, especially this happens in households where a mother is dark skinned, or dad is dark skinned and mother is not dark skinned, when it's one or the other, then one sibling might be darker skinned and the other sibling is not darker skinned. That's when it gets really, really bad. So from those people, the horror stories are even worse, because, they were always compared to their sibling, and they always ridiculed about whether they belong to that family, and, things like that, which are so hurtful. And you kind of peg one sibling against the other. And also for women, it's a lot worse, right? So I had a dark, my brother is dark skinned too. But the brunt of it was bared by me, because, nobody used to tell him anything. Boys were allowed to be dark skinned.
He was a boy.
Yeah, exactly. And my mother...
So it didn't matter.
Yeah, my mother is light skinned also. Not fully light skinned, but still, way lighter than me. So my options were very few. I would express it to my mother, but, my mother didn't have the tools to deal with it either. So, and I think that's what's missing. I feel people haven't had those discussions, and I feel if they start talking, they'll find a lot of solidarity in each other. And that's why I can't wait for people to just start accepting it and acknowledging it first, because without acknowledging, if you just try to jump the gun and just be okay, we're awesome now, it's not going to happen. There's a lot of internal work that needs to happen too.
Also, from kind of growing up in Mumbai and India and being surrounded by Bollywood, I remember just not seeing anybody that was dark-skinned anywhere. All the Bollywood stars were fair-skinned.
Exactly.
All the models you saw in magazines were fair-skinned.
Yep.
So the aspiration of beauty and success in every single way was fair-skinned.
Yeah.
So I think Bollywood has a lot to answer for as well.
Bollywood has a lot to answer for it, because even in their stories, they would show, like, oh, this girl is dark skinned. Of course, she's not going to find anybody. And like, then suddenly she's like super light skinned and like, very beautiful now. In the lyrics, they're always like, look at your light skin. Your light skin is so awesome. I'm like in love with your light. Yeah. Like, I'm in love with your light skinned wrists. I mean, what even? Like, my wrists have to be light skinned also. Like, whoa. And that's so recent. Like, Gori, Gori Kalai or whatever.
Gorai Kalai.
Yeah.
Yes. The obsession with fair skin is so deep-rooted in South Asian culture that we don't even realize it exists. The Hindi word for beautiful is Gori, which literally means fair or white. When I was a young girl, I loved all the old Bollywood songs. So many of them were about the beauty of women who were Gori, fair-skinned. There was Gori Hai Kalaiyan, which is about someone with fair wrists. Gore Gore Mukhde Pe Kala Kala Chashma, all about dark glasses on a beautiful white face. Ye Kali Kali Aankhein, Ye Gore Gore Gaal, which literally translates as these dark, dark eyes and fair, fair cheeks. So yes, colorism was alive and kicking and deeply embedded within my culture. It was all around my life and my family when I was growing up. My grandmother would look at me, sigh, and say to me, "If only you had inherited your mother's fair skin. Well, at least you're not as dark as your father." My aunties would tell me to stay away from the sun, so my skin didn't get any darker. My friends at school were categorized as either the fair and beautiful girls or the dark and ugly ones. I always thought of myself as not pretty because my skin wasn't fair enough. Ironically, it was only when I moved to the UK and saw how everyone was desperately trying to get a tan that I started to appreciate my own skin color. I had to move to a nation full of light-skinned people to start appreciating my own dark and beautiful skin. How do you think we go forward from here? Like you were saying, in quite a unique moment in history where we're questioning a lot of this stuff. And you've obviously done incredible amounts of work to get a lot of people thinking differently. So what's the way forward, do you think?
I think the way forward is in stories, right? In empowering stories. And humanity has seen the power a single story has of, how one story can transform lives. And I think the dark skinned people's story has still not been told yet. It's not even, forget about having multiple layers and different forms of dark stories being told about dark skin. There hasn't even been one good story, right? So we need to start telling these people's stories, telling dark skinned people's stories. We need to start acknowledging that there is a problem, because I still see a lot of people just being complacent and denying that this issue exists. So the first step for me is just like acknowledging it in yourself, right? Because for me, the transformation started happening when I recognized that I had internalized all of this colorism. And, even though I found other dark-skinned people beautiful, I was not able to see that in myself. So the first step is acknowledging it in yourself and understanding that this problem could be perpetuated intentionally and unintentionally, and realizing the ways that you yourself perpetuate colorism in whatever way possible. And then understanding that, you need to start defining beauty in different ways. Like, we've been used to this top-down approach of beauty standard setting, which is, I think, completely wrong. I think we need to democratize beauty standards. I feel like everyone should be able to define their own standard of beauty. And because, once we allow that, and once we actually even go past physical characters, because honestly, like, you don't have much control over what your physical characteristics are going to be. Like, nothing about that is under your control. What you do have under your control is your actions and your personality, and like personality traits where you act out of your own agency, like kindness and, artistic abilities and things like that, and your intelligence and your thoughts and your values. I think there are so many things that I find beautiful about people, and it was thanks to like not being considered beautiful myself, right? So to go outside of physical beauty and understand how beauty is in so many different things, and it's not one dimensional and not just associated with physical attributes. Once we start doing that, I feel like we'll start including everybody, because if it is democratized like that, then it becomes kind of like everybody's definition of beauty will include somebody that was excluded out, and so we'll start including everyone in the narrative. And I think that's the most important spiritual perspective change that needs to happen. I feel like that itself will transform everything else. But, while we wait for that full transformation to happen, we still need to, put disproportionate amounts of energy into uplifting dark-skinned people and dark-skinned stories, because there hasn't been, good stories being told about us so far. So while we are, or transforming the world and transforming everyone's minds, in the meantime, we still need to, talk about our own stories and create stories on the big screens in television and in media and in, film, celebrating dark skin. The only thing that can really make you ugly is really just hate. So if you are just a hateful, bad person, I think that's really the only thing that qualifies as ugly. If we look at all the fish in the sea, we don't look at like the puffer fish, or we don't look at them and like compare them to each other, and we don't say that this one has less spots and that one has more spots. We find all of them beautiful. We find all the plants beautiful. We find all the dogs beautiful. We find all the cats beautiful. So really, like, beauty standards have just been created to oppress us and like keep us busy with these small traps, so we don't really reach our maximum potential. So like, first consider yourself beautiful, like get to that point, because you need that to assume your power, and then understand that our powers are so much beyond beauty. Like, so we have so much unlimited potential that we need to start using, and like these traps are just unnecessary.
That's absolutely beautiful. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Seema Hari.
Thank you so much for having me.
Seema. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
If you've been affected by anything we've talked about in this episode, please head to the show notes, where I've listed some information about organizations which can offer help and support. I'm Sangeeta Pillai. Thank you for listening to the Masala Podcast, a Spotify original. Masala Podcast is part of my platform Soul Sutras. What's that all about? Soul Sutras is a network for South Asian women, a safe space to tell our stories, a place to reclaim our bodies, to tackle taboos within our culture, to be exactly who we want to be. Get in touch and tell me your stories about your taboos. Check out my website, soulsutras.co.uk, or get in touch via email at soulsutras.co.uk. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. Just look for Soul Sutras. Masala Podcast was created by me, Sangeeta Pillai, produced by Hannah Walker Brown, opening music by Sunny Robertson.